Republicans chose Congressman Steve Scalise as their party's nominee for Speaker of the House today, but it's still not clear if he actually has enough votes to become Speaker. Many Republicans have criticized the party's chaotic process, calling it absurd and a mess. Also, one of those Republicans, George Santos, just got charged again with even more alleged crimes. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. After deposing now former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy last week and setting off a chaotic chain of events, the House GOP has finally selected a new nominee for Speaker, but that doesn't mean he'll actually become the next Speaker of the House because, as we've learned many times, Republicans can definitely still screw things up.
There was a big vote among Republicans in the House today to determine a new Speaker, and the GOP's nomination for Speaker has gone to Steve Scalise, the Republican congressman from Louisiana, winning the GOP's nomination for Speaker on a secret ballot.
This is no guarantee that Steve Scalise will be the next Speaker of the House. Republicans are still divided as to how to take this process to the floor of the House of Representatives. Already, there are members of the Republican conference telling my colleague Ali Vitale that they will not vote for Steve Scalise on the floor of the House if and when this Speaker nomination actually makes it to that stage. So that the math is still a problem for these Republican candidates.
Yes, math is still a problem for Republicans. For example, they're still not sure if 306 is more than 232. And as we've seen before, winning the GOP nomination for Speaker definitely does not mean you will actually become Speaker. It's kind of like an actor getting a callback for a bit part on Succession. You didn't actually get the part yet, and even if you do, you'll probably just get yelled at by the end of the episode. By the way, Scalise voted to overturn the 2020 election, and in interviews, he's refused to state without equivocation that Joe Biden won and the election was not stolen. He's also refused to say that Donald Trump was responsible for the coup attempt and insurrection on January 6th.
When you met with the former president, did you ask him to take responsibility? Did he take responsibility?
Well, Jonathan, I was in Florida doing some fundraising throughout a number of parts of Florida. I ended up at Mar-a-Lago, and the president reached out, and we visited.
No one just ends up at Mar-a-Lago. That's like telling your spouse after a guy's trip, we just went to a movie, got dinner, and one thing led to another. We ended up at the Playboy Mansion. It happens. Mar-a-Lago is a place you go to for one of three reasons. Kiss up to Trump, a real bad wedding, or if you're a foreign spy looking to overhear our nation's nuclear secrets at the dinner buffet. Side note, what a plum gig to be a spy sent to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, you don't have to know how to break into a safe or avoid those crisscross lasers. You never have to put on a Mission Impossible mask. You just walk in the front door and say, anyone here know anything about submarines? And the next thing you know, I actually know quite a lot, and I've got pictures of them I'd love to show you. I'd love to show them to you. Before I just want to make sure you are an American. Yes, he is from Cincinnati. Go Bengals! And as if things couldn't get any more chaotic for Republicans, Congressman, and according to him, Taylor Swift's real boyfriend, George Santos, just got charged again for allegedly stealing campaign money and lying about basically every part of his life.
Federal prosecutors hit embattled Congressman George Santos with an array of stunning new criminal charges, including wire fraud and identity theft. The new accusations were made in a 23-count superseding indictment.
Republican Congressman George Santos now faces more criminal charges, and these include wire fraud, falsifying records, and identity theft. That's among other crimes. Prosecutors now accusing Santos of being involved in a credit card scheme where the campaign would charge contributors' credit cards repeatedly and above the federal contribution limits.
He illegally charged their credit cards. He's less like a member of Congress and more like a telemarketer scam your grandpa would fall for. The man said if I gave him my credit card, he'd send me gold bars in the mail. I believed him because he's a star volleyball player. Who would lie about such a thing? Is there a crime George Santos hasn't been accused of? I'm just waiting for the day you watch the news and prosecutors say Santos illegally charged donors' credit cards, stole their identities, and refused to pick up his dog's poop. And also, it wasn't his dog, it was a cat dressed as a dog, which he used to pretend he was blind to get preferential seating on an airplane, which he paid for using fake bills that he printed at a Kinko's, which he broke into at night using a golf club he claimed was a gift from Tiger Woods, but which, in fact, he stole from a child at a putt-putt course. And it won't surprise you to learn that Santos did not want to discuss these latest charges. Here he is, once again being chased down the halls of Congress by a group of reporters claiming he didn't even know about the charges because he didn't have access to his phone.
No comment. I did not have access to my phone.
Prosecutors say you defrauded the American public. Will you
No
resign?
clue of what you guys are talking about. No, I will not. Excuse me.
They said that you stole people's identities. Did you steal people's identities? Did you commit identity fraud? Voters?
What do you have
Will
to
you
say
step
to your
down?
constituents?
I will not. I have no comment. I was in conference like everyone else without my phone, so I have nothing to talk about. I need to take a look at my
Did you commit wire fraud? That was a pretty basic
not.
question.
First of all, when this is over, Santos is either going to be in jail or running the last leg of the U.S. relay team. I mean, no member of Congress has ever gotten so much cardio out of the job. Second, there's no way that's a real phone call. The screen does look like a phone call, but when you zoom into it, it says fake call to ignore reporters. Nothing sums up George Santos more than claiming he didn't have access to his phone while talking on his phone. Unless that's not his phone and he stole it from someone's grandpa. Joke's on you. I'll just buy a new one when I get my gold bars. Thank you, volleyball man. Also, not having access to your phone is such a lame excuse. It's a 23-count indictment, not a text from your mom. Maybe one of your aides could, I don't know, come up, give you a heads up. I've been interrupted during meetings for way less important things. One time I was in the middle of a meeting about our show's budget, and someone from wardrobe came in to ask me if I wanted to try on the cicada headpiece. And then I turn on C-SPAN, and George Santos is wearing it. So one of the GOP's members has been indicted again as Republicans embark on yet another chaotic fight over the next speaker. It hasn't even been a year since Republicans won a very small majority in the House, and in that time, they've seen indictments and humiliating scandals and nearly broken out into physical fighting multiple times. You might recall that in January, one Republican member of Congress had to be restrained by his face from lunging at a Republican colleague during a late-night vote for Speaker, and then a fellow Republican explained that moment in a way that made it even more embarrassing. Again, this is a Republican member of Congress talking about his fellow Republican congressman. Quote, people shouldn't be drinking, especially when you're a redneck on the House floor. Interesting fact, rednecks are the only members of Congress legally allowed to drink on the House floor. This is true. If you bring a bourbon on the House floor, you'll be ordered to leave unless you know the first names of both Duke boys and the car they drove. The member from Kentucky is out of order unless he can name the main characters from the Dukes of Hazzard. Bo and Luke and the General Lee. Woo! Them boys was crazy. You may proceed. Seriously, calling Republicans drunk rednecks is the kind of thing even I couldn't say about Republicans. Like, if we put that in an early draft of A Closer Look and then read through it, I'd get a note from one of our producers saying that joke might be insensitive to alcoholics, Republicans, and rednecks. And look, I'm not going to say who that producer is, but her name rhymes with Blemley Blorotis, who's very sensitive because she's from Indianapolis, which doesn't mean she's a redneck. It just means they're definitely within driving distance. So that was back in January. Then last week, Republicans erupted in chaos again and deposed their short-lived Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, and again, they nearly came to blows.
Jake, I'll be really candid. I think if we had stayed together in the meeting last night, I think that you would have seen fists thrown, and I'm not being dramatic when I say that. There is a lot of raw emotions right now.
Booze, fighting, and raw emotions. Is this Congress or an Irish wake? You think you miss Seamus? I miss Seamus more than you, boyo. Now let's take it outside. And remember, no grabbing to the face. This isn't Congress. I can't imagine another workplace where you're allowed to say, good thing we ended that meeting because we're about to beat the out of each other. Like, again, I know I would immediately get a call from HR if I said something like that after a pitch meeting with my writers. Although, if my writers land a punch like they land a joke, then I got nothing to worry about. Don't take this. Don't take them all on. The depths of the GOP's insanity were on full display yesterday when South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace showed up to the House GOP meetings wearing a shirt with a giant letter A on it. Mace voted to oust McCarthy last week, and she said she was wearing the shirt as a response to all the attacks against her.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace, she had a new letter, wearing a T-shirt with a big red letter A. She was one of the Republicans who ousted Kevin McCarthy.
I'm wearing the scarlet letter after the week that I just had last week, being a woman up here and being demonized for my vote and for my voice.
Did Republicans also ban the book, The Scarlet Letter? Because clearly you haven't read it. The A stands for adulterer, not, as I presume you're using it, a-hole. Also, If memory serves, the A was a mark of humiliation, not a fashion statement. Hester Prynne wasn't walking around Boston with a scarlet letter pinned to her chest going, "Oh, check me out. I just had an illicit affair during Puritan times. Jealous much?" And look, I know people didn't have that accent in the 1600s, but isn't it fun to think they did? All great literature that took place in New England can be enhanced if you imagine the people were talking like that. The Crucible? This town is crawling with witches, kid. Little Women? What's up with Beth? She looks peaked. Ethan Frome? Look who the cat dragged in. Ethan Frome. I've never read that book, so I don't. Oh, Ethan. Seriously, though, Nancy Mace, you look like you just walked out of a school play or a football game. Somewhere there's a group of Packers fans missing an A who are very upset. And even anchors are having a hard time taking Republicans seriously. Here's CNN's Jake Tapper reacting to Mace's PR stunt.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace walked in with the letter A on her shirt. As she walked into closed doors, she was asked by her colleague Annie Grail what that was about. She said it was a scarlet letter. Jake.
Okay. That's not making me convinced that they have their act together.
Damn. You just got sassed by Jake Tapper, a.k.a. you just got tapped. I do wish news anchors were more sarcastic. It's fun to imagine Walter Cronkite using that same tone to report on Apollo 11. American astronauts successfully landed on the moon, which scientists say is almost as charmless and dusty as your mama. And the dysfunction isn't just paralyzing the GOP conference, it's threatening to paralyze the entire U.S. government. Again, here is a Republican member of Congress explaining the stakes of this GOP leadership dispute.
Funding the government is part of our fundamental duty, and we can't even do that. So, and now here we are at the 11th hour with the clock ticking, and we can't even seat a speaker. Man, that says volumes. At first, it was somewhat comical. Now it's bordering on the absurd.
Bordering on the absurd. One of your members is walking around like a Sesame Street character who hangs out near Oscar's trash can selling drugs. Hey, Elmo, you want to get high? The A stands for amphetamines. Now, even Republicans are admitting in public they're incapable of governing. Again, that's not me saying that. I'm sure there's some viewers who accidentally tune into this show and think, oh, there's Myers ranting again about how Republicans suck at their jobs. But this time, it's not me saying it, it's a Republican saying it. In fact, I'm gonna repeat those exact words you just heard from that Republican congressman, but I'm gonna do it like it's the intro to A Closer Look in a segment we're calling, See If You Can Tell the Difference Between Seth talking about Republicans and Republicans talking about Republicans. All right, here we go. Funding the government is part of the Republican Party's fundamental duty, and they can't even do that. So now here we are at the 11th hour with the clock ticking, and they can't even seat a speaker, which says volumes. At first, it was somewhat comical. Now it's bordering on the absurd. For more on this, it's time for A Closer Look. Nancy Mace, what grade do we get for that bit? Yes. So, Republicans have, by their own admission, paralyzed one chamber of Congress because of their ineptitude and dysfunction. They're admitting to the world they're not a serious governing party, and still no one can predict when this pointless melodrama will end. On the bright side, maybe they'll finally have enough downtime to read that book they love about a woman named...
Scarlet Letter.
This has been A Closer Look.